Hi everyone, welcome back. I got my hands on this product from Michaels. This is a ceramic resin by the brand Brea Reese, and it's called Mix to Mold. I am stoked to try this out. It looks like it's very comparable to an eco resin, which is what I use on a daily basis. I use what's the brand Aqua Resin, which is very comparable to Jesmonite. And that has a liquid acrylic component to it that you mix in a gypsum-based powder. Now, this definitely looks like a gypsum-based powder in here. It could have some additives in there to level up its quality. I'm not entirely sure yet. I couldn't get really much information online. I looked and couldn't see anything. If you know, please comment below. It does say just to add water to this, so super curious on how this turns out, and is it a similar quality or is it more like plaster of Paris? So I'm really excited to try this out. They had other colors of the powder available for purchase on Michaels, and they also have terrazzo chips if you don't want to make your own, which is really convenient. And they also offer these pigments. Now, I picked up the black pigment because if you've worked with eco resin, you know how hard it is to achieve the black pigment. So I want to try this out. I will try out a solid black as well as a marble effect. I want to give a complete unbiased opinion on this. I'm in no way paid for trying out this product. Also, I am reading on the back here, they are claiming it to be non-toxic, which is very comparable to the other claims of the other brands in eco resin. The one difference that I have seen on their website, I don't think it's here on the package, but I was looking on their actual website and they're claiming this is the first food grade tested product. So they're saying this is food safe. Now, it's still not safe for like the microwave or dishwasher, but they've tested it, which is super interesting because Jesmonite has been specifically saying over and over in all their FAQ sections and everywhere that they have not tested it. It doesn't mean that it's not food safe and you can't put food safe sealers on it, but it's interesting. So they got approval and they did the testing for it, which is the first that I've seen. So I'm really interested in seeing this. It says it allows, it takes about 60 minutes to cure. So that's typically, within the same range as the other eco resin. So I'm not sure why they're calling it a ceramic resin. I really don't know. But I am so excited to try this out. So let's get started. Okay, so I have my material here and I just wanted to show you on the back. It has the instructions on here and a little bit of the measurement guide. It is not by grams, which is what I'm used to, but it feels like there's a scoop in there. And it basically just says mix it to smooth and pour it into the mold and allow it to cure for 60 minutes. There are other products you can buy this with. You can buy the liquid color, the terrazzo chips, and the sealer. I didn't purchase the sealer just because I have my own on hand, but I did purchase the black ink, as I mentioned before. One thing to note, and it does say it on here, is that when you use the pigment, it will increase the drying time. So it's always a fine balance between liquid to powder ratio. But it says just add a few drops and it should be pretty straightforward here. Okay, so I'm opening up the bag here and they put a little baggie inside of the bag here, and this has the scoop and the instructions in there. So I'm going to put this over to the side. And I'm already noticing this is a much different powder than I'm used to with the powder from Aqua Resin that I'm working with. So I have this on the right, and this is the Aqua Resin powder on the right and the Brea Reese powder on the left. I wanted to give you a little bit of a closer look here. I wanted to give you a close-up, so I'm going to put them in cups. It's a subtle difference, but if you're used to working with this powder every day, you can kind of tell right away that the Aqua Resin is darker in color and this Brea Reese is like almost pure white in terms of color. I'm also noticing it's extremely fine, which is super interesting. It's a lot finer than the material of Aqua Resin, which is like a little bit heavier, a little like kind of clumpier. It just doesn't feel as like finely ground as much as the Brea Reese is. Okay, so I'm going to take out what's in this baggie, and it's a little scoop and instructions. And the scoop, I believe it's what they're saying is the 1/6 cup, even though this is all in milliliters. And then in the instructions, it doesn't have a ton on this side, and then on the inside is pretty much about the same in terms of instructions on the bag. The one thing I thought was interesting is it said wash your tools with warm soapy water and dispose the excess in the trash. I would be careful when you're cleaning, putting it down the drain, because I've seen issues with something that cures. You don't want to put it down the drain. So I'd be super careful here. My other big critique is that they don't mention anything about PP&E. They do say it's non-toxic, but still there's dust. So from my perspective, I would still wear a mask. Okay, so this next step is not necessary, but because I'm always measuring my material in grams, that kind of helps me calculate the volume of how much I need just from what I'm used to. And I'm curious what 1/6 scoop equals in terms of grams. So I'm going to take 1 scoop and put it in. And you can see that 1 scoop is roughly about 50 grams. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 scoops. That will make roughly about 100 grams. And it says for 1/3 cup, which is the 2 1/6 scoops, that'll be 2 tablespoons of water. So we're going to add 2 tablespoons of water. And then I'm just going to mix this all together really thoroughly. And I'm already noticing that when I'm mixing this, I'm not noticing like a ton of clumps like I normally notice in Aqua Resin or Jesmonite. So I'm seeing some bubbles, but I'm not seeing any like large clumps from the powder, which is really cool. So this is going to lower the amount of time that you need to mix, because a lot of the mixing is just mixing out the clumps. So those are air bubbles there, but as you can see, it's really smooth, but it's definitely like a little different consistency. I can tell it's like a way different product. Now I didn't make too much material, so I'm just grabbing a small mold that I have ready to go. And I can notice already that the material is starting to thicken. So you can kind of see it's like pretty thick already. So I really think this is a quicker curing time, but also with measuring from like scoops, it's going to not be as accurate if you're measuring by grams. So that could be a little bit part of the ratio, as well as if you're adding any liquid pigments as well. But this is pretty thick already. I normally tap to get rid of any bubbles, and I did see some bubbles in there, and so I just want to make sure there's no air pockets while it's curing. So I'm just going to go ahead and tap and press in all the sides just to make sure. And I'm just going through there, but it doesn't seem like there's a ton of air bubbles. It seems pretty minimal. Now I have a little leftover material that I don't want to go to waste, and so I want to try out if I can mix some mica powder in it and how the color will turn out. So I'm going to use this green color that I have, and I can tell it's curing so quick already, and adding the mica powder is going to thicken it up and make it cure faster. Normally I add mica powder before I put the liquid in, but because I'm doing this after, that's okay. But I am going to add in a little bit more water just to see if I can tweak the ratio so that I can see if I can get a little more or working time. And this looks a little bit better, so I'm going to go ahead and pour them into these hair clip molds that I have. And I can tell that it is curing so fast and it's so thick already. I'm having a pretty hard time kind of getting it to level out on its own because it's so thick, even though I added that little extra water in there. So maybe I could have added a little more water here, but it's still working and I can still kind of spread it around in the mold. But thinking about a larger scale of production for making more items all at once, I think this would be maybe something to tweak or keep adding water as you're working, which could be a little bit of a hassle, but from like the smaller project standpoint, I think it would work just fine. Okay, I have let these cure for approximately 23 minutes after I poured them, and they seemed warmed and cured, so I didn't want to let them sit the full 60 minutes just because sometimes you get those spots, and already I'm seeing spots on these, which they might dry out, so I'm going to go ahead and pull these out and hope those spots go away over time. And keep in mind, it's a little warmer in my studio when I filmed this, so that will impact the curing time. And this is looking so good. This is so white. I don't think I've ever been able to achieve such a like awesome white bright without adding pigment. And so I'm impressed by this product for sure. It's very smooth. I'm not seeing a ton of air bubbles, and it's got a nice feel to it. Next, I wanted to try out using the pigment. So I'm going to do 4 scoops of the powder. And with that, I'm going to add in the 4 scoops of water and mix that thoroughly. So as I showed earlier, I bought the black pigment from the store, and I want to first try out doing a marble effect. So I'm just kind of swirling it around the material and then pouring it and kind of mixing around as I pour. And this looks really pretty already. I can tell. I think this is going to be a really pretty marble effect and similar to what I can create with Jesmonite pigments. For the next one, I want to try to see if I can get a black color, like a full black color here. And so I'm actually adding quite a bit of pigment in here. I had started to count it up, but as you can see, I was like adding 10, 20 to 30 drops at a time. And you can see it's really just darkening it very slowly. I would say if I were to add the same amount of Jesmonite pigments, it would be way more black. So in comparison to the Jesmonite pigments, this definitely isn't as strong of a pigment. You can kind of tell it spreads out when it hits a little bit. So it definitely has some different ingredients. I don't think they're alcohol based, but I'm not entirely sure. And I'm adding quite a bit. And as you can see, I'm just kind of going to town with the pigment because I'm really trying to get it like a super black color. And I got to the point where I felt like it was as dark as it was going to go. And you have to keep in mind when you add too much liquid or pigment in it, it doesn't cure like it's supposed to. So I just kind of called it good and said, okay, I'm going to see what this looks like after it cures. After all of that mixing time, I let it sit for about 15 minutes, keeping in mind it's a lot warmer in my studio because it's the summer right now, and it looked fully cured, so I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the mold, and it looks ready to go. I don't see anything sticking to the mold, and it looks cured, and you can kind of tell there's some spots on there, which I do think will dry, so we'll set that out on a drying rack and let that dry. And it looks like kind of like a dark gray. I wouldn't say this is black, but I'm curious what it's going to look like once we put the sealer on it, because sometimes that helps enhance the color. And this marble looks so beautiful. I'm so happy how this turned out. This turned out very similar to how my other marbles turn out using Jesmonite pigments. Next, I have already sanded the bottoms of these items, and I'm going to go ahead and go in with my typical sealer that I use, which is this stone and wax sealer from Clark's. It's my favorite sealer. It's what I use all the time. And I can tell it's applying a lot differently. I can't tell if it's like quite soaking into the material yet or not. So perhaps using their proprietary sealer might be better in this case, but it's still working. It's still giving a nice finish to it. It's just a little bit different. So I would need to run some tests on like the waterproofing aspect of it, but so far it's going pretty good. And wow, like I can't believe actually how much this is darkening. It's actually darkening the attempt at the black color quite a bit, more than I thought it would. So there was definitely like a good amount of pigment in there, but you can tell it's still like a very dark gray. It's not quite black. Now that these have all been sealed, I wanted to give a close-up. So this is the white, this is the base, and this is absolutely stunning. It is so smooth. There are really no visible bubbles in this. It's actually really impressive of a product, and I'm really pleased to see how white it is. This, for reference, is the base of the Aqua Resin. So you can tell it's like an off-white cream color, and the Brea Reese is very bright white. So I wanted to show that comparison. And then for these two, this dark gray is almost black, but not quite black. This is the blackest that I can get the Jesmonite. So unfortunately, I don't love the pigments and probably wouldn't use them again. I would just use my Jesmonite pigments. But the marbling did turn out. So for like a marbling effect, I definitely would say that the pigments work well for this kind of effect. Okay, to give a final overview of this ceramic resin by Brea Reese, I am giving a pro and con list versus Jesmonite and Aqua Resin because those are pretty much the same. I would say the pros to using the Brea Reese is that it's very smooth of a product. I was super impressed. It was so much easier to mix, as well as there were not as many bubbles, which is a huge benefit. It can reduce your working time of like mixing and everything like that. So I thought that was a huge benefit. I did think it was nice that there was a bright white base because that can be a little bit harder to achieve using the other brands. And then as well as having a food safe component. Now it was interesting when I first bought this, I remember seeing that it was food safe entirely, but then when I went back to the website, it said only, I think with its gloss sealer is it food safe. So I would double check it before you use it if you're really going to use it for food. I just kind of stay away from using all this kind of stuff in food, but just to keep in mind, do your research before you use it for certain applications. And then for the cons, because it was curing super fast, I felt like it had a very short working time. Now you could probably play around with adding a little bit more water to make it more liquid. It might give you a longer working time, but that was a little bit difficult. I felt like it was curing really fast and it would only allow you to do maybe 1 or 2 items before it starts to cure. So I felt a little pressured on that. So I put that on the con side. I also felt like there was very minimal product information. I had a hard time researching what's in this product. I felt like there wasn't enough information on safety precautions. So I'd like to see that be added going forward. And then in terms of the pigments, it was a little bit hard to get those vibrant colors. I feel like Jesmonite, they have such a great, I can't speak enough about their pigments. They're such high quality pigments. It's hard to compare against those. And then because right now it's just sold through Michaels, it's a small quantity. I looked online. I don't think you can get a little bigger size, but it's still not a huge quantity. So for somebody who has a shop and does markets and makes quite a bit of product, this would be a downside for me. I wouldn't be able to switch over to this kind of product. So this is just, my review, how I thought this material was. Would I use it again? Maybe. I thought I'd probably use the rest of the material that I have, but overall I'm not going to switch just because of the way that my store is run and I'm comfortable with the products that I use. But overall it works really well and I would suggest it for those who are looking to experiment, play around at home for something similar to the eco resins that are out there on the market, and it's very accessible at Michaels. So overall, I thought it was a pretty fun experiment and hope you like this. Please comment below if you have any questions, feedback, anything you'd like to see next time. Thanks again.